What in 2002 led you to that conclusion? What were the facts that you found inescapable? Tell us those facts because so many people are in such confusion about the different states of contemporary environmental science.
Well, it's a little embarrassing for a left-brained uber scientist to admit, and that's exactly where I was in 2002. That book was published in 2003, but the major editing was going on in 2002. And at the time, I used intuition. The scientific facts were not in clear view. There was no clear evidence yet that we were headed for human extinction in the relatively near term. But there were little bits here and there about what industrial civilization was doing to the atmosphere of this, our only planet. And carbon dioxide emissions were high and rising. So it was mostly intuition, and that's a little embarrassing for a scientist to admit. But
And
there
that
were,
intuition has been borne out, as you make very clear in Extinction Dialogues, with appalling facts, hasn't it, about, for example, the ways in which the feedback loops are working, the ways in which massive amounts of methane gas are being released. So it would be very helpful for us to know where you stand right now in 2015.
well, yes, and in 2002, when I was working on that book, I reached that conclusion, and then shortly thereafter, a year or two later, I discovered the concept of global peak oil. That is, that net energy would start to decline, and I thought, well, here's the Hail Mary pass. This is what's going to save us. Industrial civilization will reach its overdue end, and therefore we won't be able to continue to contaminate our atmosphere. And not to mention the extinction crisis and all those other things that go along with civilization. So I thought this was the savior, but clearly now it's too late for that because we have triggered more than 4 dozen self-reinforcing feedback loop. The most notable of those, methane coming out of the Arctic Ocean, according to Paul Beckwith, a scientist at the University of Ottawa in Canada, will cause the global average temperature of the Earth to rise 5 or 6 degrees centigrade within a decade or two. He reached that conclusion.
Within a decade or two, 5 or 6 degrees. And what is the cutoff point for human life?
Well, we've never had humans on the planet at 3.3 degrees centigrade or higher on the planet in the past. The maximum temperature humans have, any form of humans, have been on this planet was at 3.2 degrees centigrade above the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, above what I'll call baseline from now on. So we're headed for 5 or 6C. Interestingly,
in 10 to 15 years, potentially.
Well, in 10 to 20 years. And you know, there's an article by Oliver Tekel for The Guardian in 2008 indicating that 4C means extinction. In fact, the title is at 4 degrees, all we can plan for is extinction, or something like that, as if there's some way to plan for human extinction. So we're headed for very rapidly a temperature rise beyond which humans have persisted. And it's not because we're not clever, we're very clever. In fact, I think we've been misnamed. We named ourselves Homo sapiens, sapiens, wise, the wise apes. A better name might have been Homo calidus, the clever apes. We're very clever. And so it's not that we aren't clever, we are very clever. It's that our habitat for our species was such a rapid